Hello bunnies and welcome back or to Woodland Bunny Cozy Space to talk books. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my winter TBR and some winter reading recommendations too. I've got 4 books for each pile, so let's get started. Beginning with the books on which I'm wanting to read this winter, I don't have too much context surrounding them or much descriptors, but the theme for this video and for the season for me just seems to be coziness. If it is cozy to me, then it is a winter read. So without further ado, let's begin. Starting with The Midnight Lie, because this is my December book club pick for the Bunnies book club. You are more than welcome to join. I will leave the video below announcing the book club and all of the details in which you have. But anyway, The Midnight Lie, from what I know, it's a fantasy. It seems very whimsical, fantastical, and maybe a bit fairy tale elements within it as well. So I'm very eager and anticipating reading it. And next up, these all seem to split into different genres almost, but we've got what I think is a horror style book, and it seems again though very whimsical and magical, and of course it is screaming coziness to me, hence why it's on this list. But yeah, it's just seeming like it's full of fantasy but also it's horror, and one of the quotes on the back says, "A spellbinding dark fantasy of generational magic and mischief, a vivid story as alluring as the taste of goblin fruit." So that definitely sounds intriguing to me. Then we have a book which I've had my eye on for quite a while and have owned for quite some time, and that is Entwined. And this book has a descriptor of being fairy tale and whimsical, and it's all about a ball and there are different sisters trapped in the ball. Again, it has those descriptors of being very whimsical, a bit of fantastical, maybe a bit of magical realism woven in that as well, and just overall that cozy feeling. The final book on my TBR for this video, I definitely have more books that I want to get to this season, but just sticking to a few hopeful attainable books, I'm going to want to read The City of Bones, and this one has been one in which has been around for ages. I read it years and years and years ago, and I can remember somewhat the plot points within it because it is such a popular book read series and Cassandra Clare is such a popular author, but I just can't remember the ins and outs of it, and it's just been calling to me, and I thought what better season to delve into it than get cozy while it's really cold outside and just get lost into a fantasy world. There are plenty of books to get lost into this series that even branches off this series as well, and so I thought this was the perfect series to start in the cooler wintry cozy months. So those were all of the books on my TBR, and now on to the wintry book recommendations I recommend to you for this cozy season. Beginning with The Bright and Pale. Personally, I didn't absolutely love this one, but I know that if I didn't love a book, there's someone out there is bound to. This one has Russian folklore woven into it. It's set in the mountains, it has friendship, and it is fantasy of course too, so it has that element of tension and adventure, and again just one that you can cozy up with while it's cold outside, but also replicated in the book. And I think you can tell from the cover alone that it's set on the mountains, it's very high stakes, and there are all of those themes woven into it as well. And so if these sound interesting to you, then I recommend this. We have what I like to call a classic, which is The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. This one is so nostalgic to me for reasons in which I can't explain because I only read it this year, but to me it just screams wintertime. I don't know if it's the cool cover or the atmosphere of it being set in a graveyard, but it being full of love and abundance with the characters that are woven into this, or the storyline itself making you feel a bit cold inside because, like I say, it's set in a graveyard, and there is this mystery element woven through it as well. But I definitely think it is perfect for this winter season, and if you haven't ventured into it yet, then I do recommend you doing so, maybe within the season of coziness. Then I have 2 more recommendations for you. The first one is For the Wolf, and this one I read in winter last year, I believe now, and this one is a play on a Little Red Riding Hood. It's very fairy tale-esque and whimsical, set in a forest/woods, so it has the inviting element of wanting you to get cozy while there's adventure going on inside your head, and it's very much set in the winter as well, as you can tell by the cover, and it was such a delight to read, and it was so enthralling, and like I say, full of that whimsy fairy tale element, being based off Little Red Riding Hood too. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. and I really liked our main character as well. She was very much an outcast and sort of fighting for her own right, and so if those themes sound interesting to you, then I recommend this read for the winter season. Then the final book I have to recommend you for the winter season, in which is a bit of an unconventional choice I suppose, is These Violent Delights. And the reason in which I'll explain is because I feel like the character and the way the main character acts in this is so cold. Like, their actions are so cold and just so icy, and I feel like as a character themselves they depict winter almost. I feel like that's such an interesting thing to read in a particular season you're reading, if the character you're reading about makes you feel that way emotions wise, because this is a bit of a murder mystery. It has that dark academia vibe written into it. It's basically about these two characters who become infatuated and obsessed with one another, and I thought it was just such a thrilling read, and I definitely highly recommend. It is one of my favourite novels, although I do have many of those. So my friends, those are all of the books in which I'm hopeful to get to this winter season and that I recommend to you to cozy up with this winter season as well. I'd love to hear if you have any recommendations as well, and I thank you ever so much for joining on today's adventure. I hope you have a wonderful day or night, and until next time friends, bye!